Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Kiorkof, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're talking about my must-own running backs going into the 2020 fantasy football season. On today's episode, we're talking about a couple running backs that I honestly just can't get enough of. This offseason, I've drafted these couple players so many times because not only did they have the success last season, but they're going to have even more opportunity going into the 2020 season. And as I always preach here on the channel, opportunity leads to success in fantasy football, and at the running back position, that's even at a heightened level. So when we talk about these running backs, I'll give you guys my perspective on exactly where they're going to land in terms of overall productivity this upcoming season by the end of the 2020 season, and then the stats that kind of back up my thought process. Now, before we begin, I want to thank you guys first and foremost for the incredible support you guys have sent my way, whether it's breaking my subscriber record, the most views on a single video ever, the most likes on a single video ever. You guys have come out and supported the channel so much. I cannot thank you guys enough. It's absolutely incredible. Thank you so much in advance. Again, we'll try to do a live stream in the coming days. I'll try to give away as many of my draft guides as possible. For those of you who are just looking to find that, you can go down to the description of the video and find information on that. But we will be doing a live stream later this week, probably on Friday prior to this weekend's drafts to kind of get you guys ready. We'll talk about some stuff, so kind of keep that in mind. But again, I cannot thank you guys enough for the incredible support. For those of you who have been with the channel for quite some time, thank you very much. For those of you who are new, make sure you click the subscribe button. We are going to be creating fantasy football content here on the daily for the entirety of the 2020 season, whether it's off-season content like this, mock drafts that'll be coming down later in the week, live streams, and or regular season content like running back, wide receiver, quarterback, tight end rankings, Sunday morning live streams. All of that will be available, strength of schedule, all of that. But either way, thank you guys again for the incredible support. The next goal is 15,000 subscribers, right? So let's get there. For those of you who are not subscribed yet, make sure you click that button right now. All right, now let's go ahead and let's talk about some running backs that I absolutely love. As you can probably see, Austin Eckler was on the thumbnail for a reason, and Austin Eckler is a player that, in my opinion, this upcoming season is going to make that next jump into stardom. I mean, sure, he was a top running back already last season in terms of fantasy football, but this upcoming season, he's going to have the Chargers backfield all to himself. When we saw what he was capable of accomplishing last season, from weeks 1 through 4 of last season, when Melvin Gordon had held out, Austin Eckler was an absolute monster. He had 56 rushing attempts for 220 rushing yards, 3.93 yards per attempt, 3 rushing touchdowns, 25 targets that led to 24 receptions, 270 receiving yards, and 3 receiving touchdowns, which was a grand total of 95 fantasy points in 4 games, which is a 23.75 fantasy point per game average in a half PPR scoring format. That in itself, right out the gate in the 2019 season, kind of established everyone, oh my God, Austin Eckler can really carry this team. He does not need Melvin Gordon. He's not just a third down back. He can carry this team without a doubt, and he proved that. I mean, even in those first 4 weeks, he played 70.8% of the offensive snap counts, and to be honest, it didn't look like it was wearing him down at all. He could have probably maintained that for the entirety of the season, but Melvin Gordon kind of got nervous, even without a contract, came back because he knew if he didn't come back, he wasn't going to be re-signed, and another year with him out potentially could have led to him not getting signed in the offseason. Regardless, even when Melvin Gordon returned from weeks 5 through 17, Austin Eckler was still an incredibly consistent running back, producing 76 total rushing attempts for 337 yards, a 4.43 yard per carry average. The yard per carry average even increased later down the line of the season. 83 targets that led to 68 receptions, 723 receiving yards, 5 receiving touchdowns for a total of 168 half PPR scoring points, which was a 14 fantasy point per game average. Now, taking that into account, he even had the amount of snap counts that he dropped in terms of overall productivity is a pretty significant margin once, in fact, Melvin Gordon came. But they ran a lot of 2-back sets, and Melvin Gordon himself played 50+% of the offensive snaps. But overall, I went and saw a pretty significant margin of opportunity for Austin Eckler, regardless of Melvin Gordon's presence. I mean, Melvin Gordon throughout weeks 5 through 17 was averaging 13 fantasy points per game, which was even less than Austin Eckler, but he was getting majority of the touches. I mean, Melvin Gordon from weeks 5 through 17 had 162 rushing attempts, which is doubled Austin Eckler's opportunity, and he had 55 targets that led to 42 overall receptions. So overall, he had 200 plus touches, and yet Austin Eckler was still a monster in this offense. And it's because of the fact that Austin Eckler can get it down on the ground or through the air. Last season, he had 10 games of 5+ receptions, did not have a single dropped pass last season. Again, 92 total receptions is no joke, whether it's half PPR or full PPR, Austin Eckler is a player you want to own because of how productive he is, whether the game script is on his side or against him. When the Chargers this upcoming season, whether it's with a rookie quarterback like Justin Herbert or Tyrod Taylor down in the stretch, whether they're in the positive, in the positive game script of running the ball and trying to kill clock, or in a negative game script trying to come back in games and pass the ball to Austin Eckler as much as they can on a drive, he's always going to be involved in this offense. I mean, Coach Anthony Lynn is a running backs coach, and he's the head coach of this team. They signed Austin Eckler for that 4-year deal this offseason for a reason. They're confident in him, and they know he's going to be the lead back of this team going forward. Again, Austin Eckler last season had an incredible year. I mean, he's one of only 5 running backs last season to have over 1,500 total yards last season and 10 plus touchdowns. Pretty ridiculous number. On top of that, he had 1.17 fantasy points per touch and was the 6th most elusive back according to PFF among all running backs that had at least 100 more touches last season. That in itself, pretty ridiculous. Moving on, a couple stats that I kind of wanted to mention and I kind of designated on the bottom here. Melvin Gordon touches and touchdowns. Over the last 4 seasons, from 2016 to 2019, Melvin Gordon has been a huge part of this offense. And now that we all know, Melvin Gordon will be playing for a division rival in the AFC West with the Denver Broncos. But that opportunity, those touches, those touchdowns are going to be on the table for a guy like Austin Eckler. And sure, maybe this offense takes a little bit of a step back with a more inexperienced quarterback. But ultimately, I think Austin Eckler is still going to have so much opportunity. And like I mentioned, opportunity always leads to success. Look at the amount of touches Melvin Gordon has had over the last 4 seasons. On the ground and through the air combined, I mean, 295, 342, 225, and just this past season in 12 games, 204. All in all, those touches are up for grabs, and that kind of opportunity for Austin Eckler is going to take him to the next level. On top of that, the amount of touchdowns Melvin Gordon scored. I mean, even once he came back last season, he scored 9 touchdowns in the last 12 weeks of the season. Prior to that, every single season was double-digit touchdowns because, again, in this offense that wants to run the ball with an offensive-minded head coach that is a running backs coach, when you get down into the red zone, what are you going to do? You're going to pound the rock or feed the running back the ball out of the backfield in the passing game. That's what they have absolutely done in LA or in San Diego. And the Chargers, in my opinion, going into this upcoming season, have a monster running back on their hand. Now, you may be thinking, okay, again, the quarterback situation, we don't know where it's going to be. Again, positive or negative game script, they're going to be fine. All right, what about the offensive line, Andrew? Well, the offensive line improved significantly this offseason. They went and brought in Brian Bulaga, the right tackle of the Green Bay Packers. He was a top 5 right tackle in terms of overall grading according to PFF last season. On top of that, they get back Mike Pouncey, the center. He only played 5 games last year. He was on the IR, another one of these better centers. You bring in Try Turner. You went ahead and you traded away Russell Okung, the left tackle. You're going to move Sam Tevi to the left tackle position. You bring in Try Turner, who is an upgrade at the guard position, and you still have competition at camp. You still have Forrest Lamp, who was a former early round pick that can win the left guard job, and you have yourself a more reconstructed overall offense line. I mean, last season, this offensive line was the 29th best offensive line, or you could say the fourth worst offensive line in the National Football League, according to PFF. Overall, their right and left tackle combination allowed the most pressures amongst all right and left tackle combinations in the National Football League. The amount of improvements they've made up front is not only going to lead to an overall better opportunity for Austin Eckler, but it's going to lead to success. And another thing that I wanted to mention, and I've mentioned it a lot this offseason, I think Austin Eckler going into this upcoming season is going to make that Christian McCaffrey jump. Now, just kind of put it in perspective. Christian McCaffrey in his rookie year split a lot of carries with Jonathan Stewart. If and when he did, he still finished as a top 12 fantasy running back, in a half PPR setting. The next year, no more Jonathan Stewart. He went over to the New York Giants, and they gave Christian McCaffrey the full opportunity. Despite being a small running back, not big enough, not tall enough, he doesn't have enough muscle. It did not matter. Christian McCaffrey applied himself, and he took the bull by the horns and absolutely dominated in 2018. And then on top of that, improved in 2019 as a back that, sure, might not be able to touch the ball 300 times on the ground, but is going to have so much opportunity on the ground and through the air combined that he's an unstoppable force in fantasy football, especially with fantasy football leaning towards we want receiving backs, and everyone that is in a top tier position needs to be able to catch the ball. I think Austin Eckler kind of moves himself into that conversation. Let's not forget, Austin Eckler, 4.8 speed in terms of the combine, literally is like the same height and weight as a Christian McCaffrey. And if you haven't seen the picture this offseason, Austin Eckler's jacked. And yes, you may be thinking, oh, Andrew, okay, he's jacked. All NFL players are jacked. But hey, a couple years back, Christian McCaffrey was looking jacked during training camp. And I said something about it, and everyone roasted me. And then he had a monster year. Regardless, I think Austin Eckler is going to be awesome this season. I can't get enough of him. I think he's a must-own running back. And currently, going in the second round, if you can go ahead and get him on the way back with a lot of teams kind of passing on him, it's just so much opportunity, so much upside for a second-round pick this upcoming season. I can't get enough of Austin Eckler. Moving on to our next running back, it's Joe Mixon. Joe Money. Joe Mixon was paid earlier today a 4-year contract, which was pretty much going to give him about $12 million a year. An incredible sight to see. I mean, Joe Mixon, prior to a couple days ago, was kind of dropping on draft boards because the migraines, or he was missing practice. Maybe it was a contract dispute. We don't know, but I'll tell you this much. $12 million a year is going to clear up those migraines. Joe Mixon is going to be ready for week 1, and boy, am I excited about the potential of Joe Mixon this upcoming season. The statistics that he produced last season are a trend that hopefully continues in 2020, because if it does, he can honestly be an upside back that could truly be in this top 5 conversation by the end of the 2020 season. And I'm not just saying that. Last season, in terms of overall productivity, Joe Mixon, 1,137 rushing yards, 5 rushing touchdowns, 45 total targets, 35 receptions, 287 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. He finished as the number 13 overall running back in half PPR with 207.9 points and finished almost just nearly 13 fantasy points per game. Again, he's a 24-year-old running back just going into his 4th year of his NFL career. A young guy, his legs are still there. We don't got to worry about it. But the difference between Joe Mixon in the beginning and the end of the 2019 season was such a huge difference. I mean, I just can't, it's literally a 10-point fantasy point difference. Looking at the numbers that I posted on screen, from weeks 1 through 7 of last year, Joe Mixon was not used. I mean, the fact of the matter was that an overall, 99 touches in 7 games, that's not enough for Joe Mixon of all players. I mean, he had 84 rushing attempts for 254 rushing yards, 0 rushing touchdowns in those 7 games. 21 targets for 15 receptions, 99 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns, and 7.83 fantasy points per game. That kind of productivity is just, it's not going to cut it. And a lot of people got burnt at the beginning of the 2019 season. And yes, he was only playing 50% of the snaps, and everything was just not looking in the direction of Joe Mixon. But as soon as week 8 hit, they went to London to play the Los Angeles Rams. And I remember this game because I visually saw Joe Mixon turn the corner. And he went from being a below par to, oh my God, Joe Mixon is gone. Like, where Joe, he's fading away, to, oh my God, he's back. Joe Mixon is going to establish his name. You're going to remember his name, and he's going to be a player that's going to dominate here on forward. From weeks 8 through 17 of last season, he had 194 rushing attempts for 883 rushing yards, 5 rushing touchdowns, 24 targets that led to 20 receptions, 188 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown, and he averaged 17.01 fantasy points per game, increased his snap count by nearly 10%. That in itself is an incredible sight to see. A couple of the numbers from that spread of games, from weeks 8 through 17, it was a 9-game total. If you compared the last 9 games of Derrick Henry's season and the last 9 games of Joe Mixon's season, Joe Mixon had more rushing attempts. I mean, he was averaging 21.56 rushing attempts per game in the last 9 games of the season. Nobody else had more rushing attempts than Joe Mixon at the back end of the season. I mean, the amount of opportunity that this team gave Joe Mixon, they allowed him to run rampant on defenses, and he absolutely took advantage of it. Had 4 100-yard rushing games in the back end of that season and dominated on a weekly basis, regardless of what kind of defense he was playing against. Whether it was against Baltimore, he's running over 100. Whether it's against New England, he's running over 100 yards, and he dominated them. Another one of these statistics, Mixon versus Henry. The fact that Mixon only had to face a stacked box of 8+ defenders 7.91% of the time last season, in comparison to like a Derrick Henry that faced it 35.31% of the time. That's a number I love to see. If you're not going to respect Joe Mixon and you're not going to respect the Bengals offense enough to, stack the box, just wait till Joe Burrow shows up. The quarterback position improves. You got yourself AJ Green on the outside. They're not going to be able to stack the box against this team once again. And with a soft box and an improved offensive line, I mean, a significantly improved offensive line, you get Jonah Williams back, the left tackle, former first-round pick out of Alabama. You go ahead and you bring in Xavier Su'a-Filo, the offensive guard formerly of the Cowboys, if I'm not mistaken. You have an improved offensive line, to say the very least. And if defenses are going to show a soft box with 6 or 7 defenders, this offensive line is going to maul them, and Joe Mixon's absolutely going to take advantage of it. I mean, even last season, behind the 31st best offensive line in the National Football League. I mean, literally, you could have said they're the worst offensive line last season. Even with that, he had 14 rushes of 20-plus yards. He forced 52 missed tackles last season and had a 3.15 yards per carry after contact. That in itself, whoo, goodness, Joe Mixon is a monster. And even that, another one of these stats I wanted to mention, Joe Mixon overall last season. Yes, he had 5 rushing touchdowns. He had 2 receiving touchdowns. 7 touchdowns is not a bad thing. But the fact of the matter was that last season, Joe Mixon had the second most red zone rushing attempts amongst all running backs. He had 16 from inside the 5-yard line. Now, if in fact he sees those numbers once again with an improved offense, them finding the red zone more often, and Joe Mixon having more opportunity down in the red zone, if he can once again see himself with 16 rushing attempts from inside the 5-yard line, those 4 touchdowns that he had last season, out of those 16 attempts, that's going to increase. We're going to see double-digit touchdowns from Joe Mixon. If that happens, the talk that I'm having with you guys, this conversation of him jumping into the top 5 or 6 running back conversation this upcoming season, it is a possibility, to say the very least. Honestly, and also the fact that, like, okay, we talk about Austin Eckler and the fact that he is a receiving back. Is Joe Mixon a capable receiver? He didn't have any games last year of 5+ receptions. That's fine. But he's had over 30 receptions every single season of his career. And if in fact they want to go ahead and invest the money into him like they did this offseason, then they're going to invest more opportunity into him. They're going to get him the ball more often. Whether it's, on a screen pass here or there, or just a check down, I guarantee you Joe Mixon is going to play more snaps this year. And though Giovanni Bernard is there, I'm not worried about Giovanni Bernard. And not at the slightest, and none of you should be, because his numbers have been declining over the years because Joe Mixon's has been increasing in terms of overall opportunity. Either way, I really have a lot of confidence in Joe Mixon. I'm glad he got paid. Those migraines are certainly going to heal up very soon. And Joe Mixon, in my opinion, is going to be a fantastic running back. In my opinion, a must-own running back. Do with it as you may. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I really do, guys, appreciate your support. Hopefully you liked today's video. If you did, click the like button down below. Subscribe to the channel. If you're interested in more content like this for more must-owns at different positions or at the running back position, we can go ahead and talk about some other players. Again, later in the week, we'll be doing a live stream here on the channel, give away some draft guide stuff like that. Outside of that, we're going to go ahead and have some very interesting content coming down the pike. We'll do a couple mock drafts. We'll talk about defenses in terms of how you should target or strategize targeting defenses in your upcoming drafts. Got a pretty good video on that coming down the pike. But either way, once again, thank you guys for the support. I can't thank you enough. I appreciate it. Let's get to 15K. Be a friend, tell a friend about the channel. I appreciate it. I know, it might help them in their fantasy league, but it helps me out, and I'd really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. And until next time, I'll see you guys. Peace.